prepared to listen to the two schools? Yep, these are the top first schools for Pool A and Pool B. And there are St. Joseph's International School and Quickila Secondary School. Please make welcome the St. Joseph's International School. Participants are Paolo Avinate, Olive Mandui, Dion Kombeg, and Hope Imaka. The Quickila Secondary School participants are Joshua Kailem, Russell Navuru, Michael Oake, and Luana Duri. Please make welcome the Quickila Secondary School students. Their topic of discussion is sovereign fund is ideal during this time of LNG era. Now I'd like to call upon the first speaker of the affirmative side.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Chairperson, adjudicators and fellow speakers, and members of the audience. My name is Paolo, and I'm the first speaker of the government side. The topic stated for this debate is that a sovereign wealth fund is ideal for PNG in the LNG era. Before I present a brief overview of my team's case, I would like to define the topic and its key terms. A sovereign wealth fund is a state-owned investment fund composed of financial assets such as bonds, stocks, property, precious metals, and other financial instruments. In simpler terms, it can be referred to as a pool of money derived from a country's reserves, which are set aside for investment purposes that will benefit the country's economy and citizens. The word ideal from the Encarta Dictionary is defined as the best or the most perfect example. Therefore, the topic is asking us whether a large amount of money that will be kept aside for the LNG revenue is suitable for a country like Papua New Guinea during a period of high GDP, high export earnings, and employment creation, the period we call the LNG era. As members of the government, we strongly believe that a sovereign wealth fund is ideal for PNG in the LNG era. As the first speaker, I will be giving background information on sovereign wealth funds, its nature, its objectives, and its application from a PNG perspective. Our second speaker, Olive, will be discussing the effects of a SWF on the PNG economy and the consequences that may arise if not established during the LNG era. Dion, our third speaker, will be analyzing the management strategies that could be assimilated to help attain good governance and to eradicate corruption regarding SWFs. And our fourth and final speaker, Hope, will be concluded by summarizing our main arguments and enforcing our proposed recommendations. A sovereign wealth fund, as I mentioned earlier, is a pool of funds derived from a country's reserves, which is set aside for investment purposes that will benefit the country's economy and its citizens. Sovereign wealth funds can be characterized as maximizing long-term returns, with foreign exchange reserves serving short-term currency stabilization and liquidity management. Why and how will this benefit the country's economy and citizens? Well, from a PNG perspective, the following are the main objectives of an SWF. Firstly, macroeconomic stabilization, contributing to a short-term macroeconomic stability and avoiding deterioration in the quality of public spending. Secondly, avoidance of the Dutch disease, to counteract upward pressure on and volatility of the level of real exchange rate, which affect the competitiveness of the non-resource tradable sector. Thirdly, asset management, to help managing rising financial assets accrued from natural resource revenue. And finally, savings, to build up wealth for future generations, ensuring intergenerational equality and long-term fiscal sustainability. According to Chief Economist of Asia, Paul Grunwald, there are several options for a sovereign wealth fund, but in our view, it should be a national savings account designed to ensure future generations benefit from the revenue that is expected to flow from the LNG project. A transparent, sovereign wealth fund with strict governance, would also help avoid inflationary expectations. In the Post-Courier, dated 27 May 2010, Mr. Benny Popoytay, Deputy Governor of BPNG, stated that, and I quote, "There are fears that revenue being earned from the construction phase of the PNG LNG project may be subjected to abuse if proper fund management mechanisms are not established." He said that this was a serious situation that we have to give a serious thought to. And there was currently a need to diffuse the high level of liquidity, which is about 700 billion, in the banking system. With the national elections coming up in 2012, he also stated that politicians who loved spending might risk these funds to misuse. With these risks, the need for the establishment of a sovereign wealth fund becomes paramount, Mr. Popotai said. Also, the latest ANZ Pacific Quarterly Report, published just this May 19, 2010, discusses that establishing a sovereign wealth fund for PNG to manage revenue from the liquefied natural gas project would help PNG maximize the expected revenue benefits from the project. The report outlines advantages of managing the LNG-related revenue offshore in a foreign currency. To conclude, the LNG project provides an opportunity to notably raise long-term growth and living standards. To ensure that the opportunity is not wasted, now is the time to strengthen policy frameworks and implementation. With the LNG project underway, a sovereign wealth fund will assist PNG reduce the volatility of its government revenues, will counter the boom-bust cycle's adverse effect on government spending, and will help build up savings for future generations. This is why we, the government, strongly believe that a sovereign wealth fund is ideal for PNG in the LNG era. Thank you.
Thank you, first speaker of the affirmative side. Now I'd like to call upon the first speaker of the opposition side.
Thank you, Chairperson, adjudicators, and extremely stunning audience. All right, first of all, as stated by the first speaker of the government, the topic is sovereign fund is ideal during this time of LNG era. All right, sovereign fund is stated according to the topic as a constructive and responsible oppositions. We would like to correct this term. There is no such thing existing as sovereign fund. It is known in its monetary sense and terminology, financial terminology, as sovereign wealth fund. As defined by the first speaker of the government, it means it's a state-owned pool of money, pool of money for the government invested in various financial assets. It normally comes from national budgetary surplus. All right. First of all, we the oppositions going to rebut and oppose the topic that sovereign fund is not ideal for the LNG era, during this time of LNG era. Before I briefly rebut on the points stressed by the first speaker of the government, I would like to introduce myself and the fellow speakers. So first, I'm Joshua Kaile, going to stress on the negative impact of this fund on the political sphere of the government, and followed by the second speaker, Mr. Russell Navuru, who's going to stress on the negative impact of this fund on the economic aspect. And then third speaker, Mr. Michael Waike, who's going to stress the negative effects of this fund in the social sphere of this country. And then finally, the final speaker who's going to summarize everything and give recommendation, that is Mr. Luana Duri, who's going to wrap up all the points, and that's it. All right, to my point. Before I go on to my points, thank you. Before I go on to my points, to rebut on what the first speaker of the government has said, he stated that it will benefit the country's economy and the citizens. But the caution behind is there are foreigners, specifically Australians, who's going to spearhead this fund. And to mind you, when they're saying they are going to spearhead it, according to Sunday Chronicles, May 30, published 2009, stated that Australia experts are going to spearhead this fund, meaning that they are going to tell us we are not sovereign enough to manage on our own. They are going to take all our leaders, all our experts, put them at the back. They are going to advise them on what to do. And obviously, they are going to use that fund for their own interest. Secondly, it stated that it's going to be reserved for future development, future generation development. I tell you, we are developing now, so that money should be used. There are so many needs, so many avenues to be addressed from today. We are developing, and that money should be utilized now, rather than reserving for the future generation that will accumulate dust, that will do nothing, that will be stagnant there for nothing. Back to my point. First of all, as you see, Papua New Guinea, we are still developing, friends. We are still developing. That is clearly evident that there are so many things to be erected. There are so many things to be established. There are so many things to be done. That is why this foreign fund is a newly established fund, and mind you, it's a new disease that is going to bring down our government to bankruptcy. Next, it's undermining ourselves as an independent nation, meaning that when establishing this fund, they are getting foreign experts. And why can't the government utilize and improve the trust accounts which are not productive, which are inactive, which are not functional? There are hundreds of trust accounts here. The Papua New Guinea government should utilize that. The Papua New Guinea government should use the experts here, rather than looking to Australia, which have proved in the post-Korea that was published forth that these consultants are paid excessively with hefty sums of money and have done nothing. Therefore, the constructive opposition would like to say that sovereign wealth fund is not ideal in this time of LNG era, and that is true.
Thank you, first speaker of the opposition side. Now I'd like to call upon the second speaker of the affirmative side.
Thank you. Good morning, opposition. Good afternoon. Morning, everybody and judges. My name is Olive Mandui. I am the second speaker of the affirmative team, and as mentioned, our topic is Sovereign Fund is ideal for Papua New Guinea during this time of the LNG era. Before I go into my points, I would just like to make a rebut on what the first speaker of the opposition has stated. He said that, the Sovereign Fund will be operated by, he was implying that it will be operated by foreigners, right? So actually the Sovereign Wealth Fund would be overseen by an independent board which is established to act in the best interest of the Sovereign Wealth Fund and have a clear mandate and adequate authority and competency to carry out its functions. Also, it would be possible, it is a possible outreach investment management to well-known international providers of those services. Local people must also be involved, basically from a non-political environment. So what they say is, even though the funds will be managed by foreign people, our people still do have a say in what's going to be done, except from a non-political basis. Secondly, this foreign investment isn't, this foreign sovereign wealth fund, it's not a disease. It actually tries to prevent diseases such as the Dutch disease, economic diseases, whatever that means. Okay. On to my argument. During this time of the LNG era, led by ExxonMobil, there's going to be a large amount of revenue pumped into our economy. The amount is projected to be about 50 billion US dollars, and is expected to start flowing in 2015 or 2016. Now, for a small developing country like Papua New Guinea, that's a lot of money. My teammates and I will strongly argue that the sovereign fund is ideal and essential for PNG during this time of the LNG era. Firstly, because due to the large revenue our country will be receiving, the most immediate impact on the economy is likely to be a sizable appreciation of the kina, along with other issues such as the Dutch disease or resource curse, inflation, and interchangeable exchange rates, etc. Sovereign wealth funds are typically created when the government has budgetary surpluses. In the case of the LNG era, of course we'll have a ton of surpluses. So to avoid issues like the Dutch disease or inflation, a sovereign wealth fund is ideal to be established so it acts as a stabilizer of the economy. For example, due to the large income that will be pumped into our economy by LNG sales, we'll be expecting a large amount of income, a large amount of injection, sorry. However, if there's going to be a consistent flow of the revenue only into our economy, it actually stimulates our economy, meaning that our leakages will not be equal to the injections. So there's more injections than leakages, and it becomes imbalanced. There has to be a sector responsible for leakages to balance the injections, and the sovereign wealth fund is ideal, particularly for the economy's stability by establishing an equilibrium between leakages and injections. So in other words, the SWF, or the Sovereign Wealth Fund, acts as a scale to balance out our economy. Secondly, another idyllic reason to set up a sovereign wealth fund is basically to keep large tracts of revenue invested in overseas assets, which then provide a diverse income stream even after the gas project has expired. So in a way, due to our investment overseas, we can still receive interest even after LNG or ExxonMobil has expired, so we can still sustain ourselves. An example would be the first sovereign wealth fund was the Kuwait Investment Authority. It is a commodity sovereign wealth fund created in 1953 from oil revenues from Kuwait, even before it gained independence from the UK. According to the many estimates made, Kuwait's fund is now worth approximately $250 billion. Just imagine if PNG did that, the same thing. According to Jonathan Goy, an Australian economist, he states that the money that is invested in PNG's sovereign fund, if we establish a sovereign fund, in the long run, it could grow to be worth several times the value of our whole economy. Third and lastly, at this point in the LNG era, PNG's economy, as I've mentioned numerous times, will be receiving large amounts of money being pumped in for the next 30 years, commencing in 2015 or 2016, which our country simply does not have the capacity to absorb all these revenues. That is why during the LNG era, Sovereign Wealth Fund is ideal to store away the money coming in from LNG for our future generations, to help stabilize our economy, and to also act as an investment so we have a definite income stream even after the LNG project has expired. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, my teammates and I strongly believe that at this point in the LNG era, a sovereign fund is ideal for PNG. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, adjudicators, the lovely audience, Papua New Guinea as a whole. I am Russell Nabru, and I will be speaking on the economical aspects of the sovereign fund. As my first speaker has already mentioned, our topic is sovereign fund is not ideal for this LNG era. Before I continue on to my points, I would like to stress something on what the second speaker of the government has stated something about the foreign people who are going to come in to help manage this fund. But what we must know is that it will be at a high risk of a government. Our transparency will be at risk. We will not know how the money will be spent. Only our parliamentarians with the people who are in charge of the management will only know how the money is spent. But will you, the people of Papua New Guinea, know? That's a problem. To carry on with my points, my first point is that the debt settlement requirement. In order for a sovereign fund to be established in Papua New Guinea, we must have completely no debt or very limited debt in order to establish a sovereign fund. Okay, you tell me, knowledgeable people of Papua New Guinea, do Papua New Guinea, our country, has limited debt? Okay, see, that's a problem. Why are we trying to establish a sovereign fund when we, the country, Papua New Guinea government, is already getting lots of debts from overseas organizations? We are already indebted to organizations such as Australia, countries such as Australia, organizations such as the World Bank. We are indebted to them with billions and billions of US dollars. Yet we want to establish a sovereign fund. For what? Why don't you get that money and pay the debts that we have before you start thinking of establishing a sovereign fund? My second point will lead me to dictated spending. Our spending of the government, the money which will be spent, the LNG money or the revenue generated, will be dictated by these foreigners. Australia, to be exact, Australian specialists will come from Australia to oversee this project. Papua New Guineans, do you not see? They will dictate our spending in their own interests. They will put money wherever they think that it is in their best interest, but not for the development of Papua New Guinea. So why are we trying to lead them or leave them to come and manage this fund? Papua New Guinea, do we not have enough knowledgeable people here who can carry out this and manage this organization if it's supposed to be established? The SWF should not be established because of these reasons. A solution or a recommendation which should be brought forth for you, the people of Papua New Guinea, to understand is that the sovereign fund should be forgotten, left out, not put into establishment, so that the government should use the revenue generated from the LNG project, use that money wisely, and in order for the country of Papua New Guinea to develop, the money should be used and put into place in places such as the primary industries. The primary industries of Papua New Guinea should be developed. The downstream processing industries should be developed to develop the country of Papua New Guinea. The human resource, you and I, we should be developed in order for this project to continue on. And if we are developed, a sovereign fund won't be needed because we won't need the money. We will be already developed, Papua New Guinea. That is why we, the constructive opposition, strongly come against this and say that sovereign fund is not ideal for the LNG era. Thank you.
Thank you, second speaker of the opposition side. Now I'd like to call upon the third speaker of the affirmative side.
Thanks. Okay. Good afternoon, adjudicators, mistress of ceremony, timekeeper, fellow debaters, and the audience. Before I proceed to my points, I'd like to begin by rebutting on a statement made by the opposition. Okay. He stated that our transparency will be at risk. Okay, let me tell you something. Governance, transparency, disclosure, accountability, and asset management and integration of the Sovereign Wealth Fund within existing fiscal framework will be supported by the best international practice and the Sovereign Wealth Fund generally accepted principles. This will properly reflect appropriate governance and accountability arrangements, as well as the conduct of investments practices by the Sovereign Wealth Fund on a prudent and sound basis. Sovereign Wealth Fund is a solution. Decisions to utilize the huge LNG revenues pose tough challenges to policymakers. Within Papua New Guinean context, utilization of these revenues with the Sovereign Wealth Fund should meet the following objectives: safeguard misappropriations, benefit PNG's current and future generations, which includes you and I, broaden the economic growth base and development, and maintain a macroeconomic policy stability. With the LNG project underway, now is the time to develop a sovereign wealth fund to manage the resource revenue, given the responsibility for maintaining a macroeconomic stability, the key objective of the sovereign wealth fund. To maximize the long-run development impact of the LNG income, domestic absorption capacity will need to guide the rate of the downdraw. Further, to minimize the potential of currency appreciation that would undermine the welfare for rural population that depend heavily on the agriculture exports, the fund resources will be retained offshore. Okay. The Papua New Guinean government's record, and not just the Somara government, in managing spending surpluses cash has been found wanting. In recent years, almost 7 billion kina in windfall revenue has been parked in trust accounts by the government. These monies that flowed in during the period when commodities prices were doing very well. Most of these funds have been depleted, and there is very little to show for them now. The Education Department says it needs 12 billion to rehabilitate all schools throughout the country. The government parked 230 million, guys, this is a lot of money, in the RESI, which is the Rehabilitation Education Sector Infrastructure Fund, for this exercise. But allegations of corruption and stealing led to the Ombudsman Commission slapping a freeze on the trust account in which the RESI funds were kept. The freeze has recently been lifted, but the education officials are resigned to the fact that they have lost those funds. Clearly, the government needs to do a lot better job to protect the wealth of the nation, of our future generation. With the Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Sovereign Wealth Fund will be based in an offshore account. Okay, with the offshore fund is preferably policy mechanism which would protect the cooperativeness and the non-mineral sector by sterilizing the government savings, avoid appreciation of currency and inflation pressures, and support government development priorities and promote prudential fiscal policy. Now, we do not want to wake up one day with nothing to show for a huge project that had the biggest companies in the world rushing to our shores. That is why it is important for us to have in place the Sovereign Wealth Fund. That is why we, the government, strongly and most firmly believe that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is more than ideal for our country, Papua New Guinea, during the time of the LNG era. Thank you.
Thank you, third speaker of the affirmative side. Now I'd like to call upon the third speaker of the opposing team.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, adjudicators, and the beautiful audience of Papua New Guinea. I, as the third speaker of the opposition side, will rebut on what the affirmative has mentioned about the LNG project. Okay, the LNG project, if the government is going to concentrate only on the LNG, then the Dutch disease will come in. Dutch disease simply means it is a situation in which the government will concentrate on one project and ignore the others. The others such as agriculture, fisheries, forestry. This will be ignored. And when this LNG project is over in the 30 years' time, where will the government turn to get these resources? Now to my points. The Australians, I would like to state, the Australians are going to patronize Papua New Guineans. They are the patrons of Papua New Guinea, as we see. So, what they say, Papua New Guineans will do. Papua New Guineans realize and think and be affirmed, be assured that we, the opposition, really disagree that our funds should be managed by foreigners. The use of surplus funds, those surplus funds which are going to be put in a sovereign wealth fund, should be utilized into other projects and used properly for the development of Papua New Guinea. We therefore disagree that sovereign wealth fund is ideal for development in Papua New Guinea in this LNG era. The solution that we're looking forward to is the government should look forward or look to the north for expertise. Expertise from Malaysia and Singapore. These people are going through, or they went through the same hardships as Papua New Guinea, and they know what to do. If we are talking about Australians, they are a developed country. They are a developed country. Please, Papua New Guineans, realize this. They have learned from the forefathers, and the forefathers have developed them. So they are a developed country, and these experts are developed. We want developing experts that know what Papua New Guinea's needs are. Papua New Guinea, look north for expertise. A classical example would be our Truka rice. Okay. Australians in the previous years, around the 80s, in the 80s and 70s, proved or said that Papua New Guinea won't be able to grow rice. I don't know, but that's what they said. Okay. According to one of the JICA officers who came to our school at Kwikila, he mentioned something about Kwikila can grow, Papua New Guinea, sorry. Sorry about mentioning Kwikila. Papua New Guinea can grow rice, and it has been proved. The markets at Kwikila sell rice, therefore we don't need the expertise or experts from other foreign nations, such as Australia. They have been patronizing our country, and we don't see any development in this nation. Well, there's been developments, but at a slow progress. We want fast developments. Therefore, we, the opposition, strongly believe that sovereign wealth fund is not ideal for this LNG era. Thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, third speaker of the opposition side. Now I'd like to call upon the final speaker of the affirmative side.
Good afternoon, adjudicators, members of the audience, and members of the opposition. My name is Hope Imaka, and I am the fourth and final speaker for the Joey government team. And I will be presenting a summary of my team's arguments. But before I go on to summarizing what my teammates have already established, I would like to make a few rebuttals against the opposing team. Firstly, they had made a reference to the old trust accounts and stated, why can't we just use these trust accounts instead of implementing a sovereign wealth fund? Well, let me just make it known to you that these trust accounts have limitations such as ineffective management arrangements, lack of flexibility, poor transparency, accountability, and governance arrangements, as well as the fact that it was an onshore trust account where people were able to gain access, which then led to mismanagement of funds. They also stated the Dutch disease is a situation where the economy would focus on one industry only. But I'd like to correct the definition. The Dutch disease is actually where an appreciating currency affects the non-mineral sector by making its exports more expensive, importing competing manufacturers cheaper, and therefore results in an overall loss of competitiveness. They had also stated the question that the old trust accounts, why not use these for other projects? Well, that's the exact point why we are trying to establish a sovereign wealth fund in the first place. We're trying to make sure that after the LNG era has died out, there at least is money for the future generations to continue our country's economy. Now on to summarizing my team's case. As members of the government, we strongly and firmly support the topic that sovereign fund or sovereign wealth fund is ideal for PNG during the time of LNG era. As our first speaker has stated, sovereign wealth fund is a state-owned investment fund composed of financial assets such as stocks, bonds, property, precious metals, or other financial instruments. As stated by the second speaker, sovereign wealth funds can be set up for a variety of purposes: for balance of payments or BOP, fiscal stabilizations, to meet future pension liabilities, while others are established as saving funds to generate financial cash flows for current and future generations. The PNG government should consider establishing a sovereign wealth fund as a way of managing the huge revenues it expects from the ExxonMobil-led LNG project. The ExxonMobil-led LNG project is by far the biggest single development project proposed by PNG. Tax and dividend revenue to the government is expected to be around $50 billion US. And as a responsible government, we are keen to see that the money is not wasted, but saved. The solution, therefore, is sovereign wealth fund that will have fiscal discipline, independent management, and prudent strategies. The institutional and operational setup of a sovereign wealth fund varies. Some examples of successful sovereign wealth funds come from countries like Norway and Botswana, including Chile, Russia, Timor-Leste, and Australia. The bulk of these countries established its petroleum fund in 2005 to receive all revenue generated from its petroleum resources. The fund is used to finance the government budget with the objective to save wealth for the future generations, de-link spending from volatile or temporary revenues, and invest abroad to help maintain macroeconomic stability through sound and transparent management of their oil revenues. The common traits for the success of these countries through sovereign wealth fund were that they were fiscal discipline, independent management, and prudent investment strategies. PNG's past experience from the emergence of new resource sectors and earlier commodity booms indicate that the country has not successfully translated these revenues into improved socio-economic indicators to the extent that might be expected. Now I'm referring to the trust accounts. In the past, Mineral Resource Stabilization Fund, or better known as MRSF, which is now closed, and trust accounts have managed these new resource sectors. The key feature to both these accounts were that they were onshore trust accounts managed onshore, yeah. It is apparent that despite the relative success of these trust accounts, there were some insignificant limitations to these approach. These limitations of domestic trust accounts relate to inefficient management arrangements where the majority of the trust account funds have been held in domestic commercial banks at a very low nominal interest rate, resulting in the Bank of Papua New Guinea having to manage excess liquidity in PNG's small financial sector by issuing central bank bills to commercial banks and other financial institutions at a significantly higher interest rates. The overall impact of this is that PNG's balance sheet has expanded rapidly in recent years, which is now much more difficult to manage. Other limitations of this were the lack of flexibility and poor transparency, accountability, and governance arrangement. In light of these experiences with domestically held funds, we, the government, strongly recommend that sovereign wealth fund is the ideal option. LNG revenues are expected to be much higher than the flow of funds at the height of both the recent and past commodity price booms. The implications for PNG's exchange rate, the cost and difficulty of operating monetary, fiscal, and macroeconomic stability will be at a much more difficult than they have been. The offshore sovereign wealth fund will then help protect the competitiveness and the non-mineral sector by sterilizing government savings. Having an offshore sovereign wealth fund would also mean that its funds could be invested in the domestic economy in a manner determined by the government through the annual budget process at a rate that does not unduly appreciate the currency or cause undue inflationary pressures to the PNG kina. A sovereign wealth fund also serves as a piggy bank for the country to cater for unexpected circumstances that the LNG project may encounter during its production stage. The government can't pull out funds from the project's allocated budget because that will just create another financial hole that the government will just have to patch up over time. They can't borrow from other foreign countries because apart from paying the money back, they're just going to have to pay interest on top of that. This is where the Sovereign Wealth Fund comes into action. So that is why we strongly recommend that if we are to take on a project of this magnitude, an offshore sovereign wealth fund is the way to go to ensure a balance in the country's economy, not only for the present-day people of Papua New Guinea, but also for our future generations. For these reasons, ladies and gentlemen, we, the government, strongly and most firmly believe that a sovereign wealth fund is ideal for Papua New Guinea at the LNG era time. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the final speaker of the affirmative team. Now I'd like to call upon the final speaker of the opposing team.
Thank you. Thank you, Mistress of Ceremony, and adjudicators, and the audience in the room and around Papua New Guinea. As our first speaker has mentioned, I'm the last speaker. I'll be summarizing what they have said earlier. But before I do, I'd like to rebut on what affirmative side said. They have said something on LNG. LNG is underway. LNG is not yet making money. Why are you so desperate? LNG is still underway. Getting that money, creating new things, you think that it's a progress. You think that it's an achievement while I'm suffering out there. Stupidity is the repetition of the same things in the other way, expecting different results. So, you see, Sovereign Wealth Fund, SWF, being a state-owned investment fund which is composed of financial assets, is dependent on government legislation, an act of parliament. For each release, for use, for economic and infrastructural development. Although Papua New Guinea, PNG government, has endorsed the creation of such funds in PNG, there's been an increase in systematic and institutional corruption. In misusing, misappropriating funds, these trust accounts by both public servants and parliamentarians. It is not viable in a country such as PNG, which does not have effective accountability in place to standard where such funds as large as SWF could be properly managed without corruption. So it is a risky. As SWF involves investing in other businesses, onshore and offshore, what they have mentioned, what the affirmative side have mentioned. Now on onshore, the economic return investments would not be favorable due to our low economic activities. For offshore investment, the return to the fund depends on the economic climate of a foreign country. So if the funding for SWF comes from a budgetary surplus, it is not an ideal use of a country's excess income, as the nature of the investment depend on the management of the business invested in. Currently, the LNG project is in controversy due to the ongoing disputes between the government and the resource owners who claim the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement, would not give them a fair benefit. So how do we know that the revenue generated from the fund will benefit the citizens of this country or these nations, especially the resource owners in Southern Islands? LNG project is not currently generating its sales income so as to produce surplus funds to create SWF, or Sovereign Wealth Fund. Where would the government get the money, get its income to create this fund? If this fund is created from the reserves, from the budget, it is a risk taken when a country needs it, or otherwise for other purpose. So what can we do as an alternative? What can we do as an alternative? So here I would like to recommend that invest money in the renewable resources. invest money in the renewable resources of different sectors. Invest money in the renewable resources of different sectors. Example, pump money into the primary sector to promote downstream processing. Secondly, convert all available cash surpluses into gold and have it stocked away in vaults in the basement of banks, or Bank of Papua New Guinea. Therefore, as reliable, constructive oppositions, we strongly believe that sovereign wealth fund is not ideal during this time of LNG era. Thank you.
Thank you. Final speaker of the opposition side. A round of applause to these two teams, please. Now we're going to have a 5 minutes question time. 5 minutes question time. Yes, we have a young gentleman at the back.
Okay, good afternoon, Papua New Guinea. I'm going against the government. Okay, talking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, take a look at Papua New Guinea now, right now. Before I go to my question, there's some remarks. So take a look at how the government is going right now. There's a lot of misappropriations, misconduct in office. There's corruption existing in the government right now. Okay. My question goes like this. Talking about the offshore account, what the government has stated, the offshore account. Why is it that the Sovereign Wealth Fund, as stated by the government, be kept in an offshore account when we, Papua New Guinea, have our own bank, such as Bank of Papua New Guinea? Is it because the government is scared of being interrogated by the Ombudsman Commission or Transparency International? Thank you.
Sorry, could you come back please and ask your question again?
Okay, as a Papua New Guinean citizen, if you are concerned of how you are surviving today like me, you're acting as the government right now, but you don't, I think you were not concentrating during my question. So, why is it that the Sovereign Wealth Fund, as stated by the government, be kept in an offshore account when we, Papua New Guinea, have the Bank of Papua New Guinea? Is it because the government is scared of being interrogated by the Ombudsman Commission or the Transparency International? Thank you.
Okay, if you were listening to what I said earlier, it says, the government's record, and not just the Samara government, in managing spending surpluses, spending surplus cash has not been found wanting. With the account on our shores, that's when our government can easily stick their hands into the account and take money, and that leads to the mismanagement of funds. That is why it is more smarter if we have the Sovereign Wealth Fund in an offshore account.
Thank you. We're going to take one question directed to the opposition. Okay, young lady from Marineville.
Okay, this question is directed to the government. You gave some very good information on SWF. However, I didn't pick up any sources. If I were to do further research on SWF, what sources can I access? Thank you. Well, most of our information came from this, the Department of Treasury and Bank of Papua New Guinea, Joint Sovereign Wealth Fund Working Group. It's a discussion paper, but most of our information came from here. So this is the main source, along with Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, and the internet.
They'll be all for question time. Please, a round of applause to the two teams. Now we're going to have judges' remarks by Mr. Kikira.
Congratulations to these two teams. This morning when I came over, I saw that they were putting butterfly decorations, and I was wondering, and is this to literally give us butterflies? I'm being assured that that was not the intention, so, and you can see that from the outcome of these two teams. We're beginning to see people getting into the habit of presenting their arguments in a logical manner. And that is very, very evident in the way you're able, the debaters are able to engage the attention of the audience. It's only when you're able to convince the audience or to touch the emotions of the audience, then you know that you've made a valid point. So congratulations, we're now leading to see, we're being glad to see some of the excellent display of skill in our debaters. So for the people who will be going through to the panels, we would like to see the same kind of display, the same kind of consistency in those teams. Other than that, I think so far so good.
Thank you, Mr. Kikira. As they leave the stage, please thank the two schools, St. Joseph's and Kwikila Secondary School. I'll ask the participants to shake hands before they leave the stage. The St. Joseph's International School participants were Paolo Avinate, Olive Mandui, Dion Kombeng, and Hope Imaka. Thank you, St. Joseph's. The Kwikila Secondary School participants were Joshua Kailem, Russell Navuru, Michael Oaka, and Luana Duri. Thank you, Kwikila Secondary School. Are you ready to find out who our winners are? Are you ready to find out who they are? That'll depend on our judges' calculations.
Are we ready for the results? Okay, maybe I'll give the opportunity for you to guess who would be our top two winners this afternoon. Maranville is saying Maranville, Guerrero is saying Guerrero. Kila Kila is saying Kila Kila. I'm sure we all had an informative session, and I'm also sure that you have all learned something because I did. Okay, did you experience the same? Okay. To our winners, the second place goes to Kwikila. And our first place goes to Maranville. We are all winners in our own rights, but whether we like it or not, there is always a good winner and a good loser. Can we all give a round of applause to Maranville and Kwikila? So that basically brings us to these two schools, to this afternoon's grand finalists. And whoever comes, the winner from this will go against the winner from Leh. Thank you.